Let's go!
What's up, dudes? Max here, back from the big Killer Instinct event that we had last week. Hashtag BringBackKI went worldwide trending up to number 4, I believe, so there's a lot of people out there that would love to see Killer Instinct continue, and everyone showed up in a huge amount of numbers. So we did have a stream, we did have a bunch of events that I was planning that evening with top players, some classic players as well as an interview with the developers that I'm going to be tossing up right now. That would be Adam Hart or Keats, who you guys might remember was the lead combat designer of KI. We go back quite a bit between our history with Marvel vs. Capcom and a lot of that stuff, and we discuss a bit of that, of how the bigger thing I wanted to outline is that Killer Instinct was really a fighting game made by fighting game fans, which is why I think so many people really ended up loving it. So I'm going to continue the interview here. There's a lot more for hashtag BringBackKI coming up very soon, and we're going to continue this entire small trend as much as we possibly can to get the attention of Microsoft to hopefully do something about Killer Instinct. So enjoy the interview, guys, and I'll be back with more Killer Instinct videos in the near future. Keats, go ahead and give us your full name and what your responsibility was on KI as a project.
Sure. My name is Adam Hart. I go by Keats on the internets, and I was the lead combat designer on Killer Instinct Seasons 2, 3, and 3+.
3+.
And,
now,
before, 3.5, whatever you want to call it. You
now,
know?
before KI, what were you primarily known for?
Oh, I've done a lot of stuff. So, fighting game community-wise, I was the director of Ultimate Fighting Game Tournament, the big Midwest tournament that eventually became Combo Breaker. When I passed it over to Rick, I was the editor-in-chief of Shoryuken.com. I was the co-host of, with Ski Sonic, the official Shoryuken.com podcast for like 3.5 years. And then I ended up making Dive Kick. Me and my wife created that.
A little game called Dive Kick.
Apartment.
Just a little game.
And then got hired at Iron Galaxy to help consult on their ports. So I worked on Third Strike Online. I worked on Darkstalkers Resurrection. I worked on Marvel vs. Capcom Origins. Then we did some KI together.
So I think
brings you up to current.
I think the first time we ran into each other, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this, Keats, was potentially E3 2010, and that's when Marvel 3 was first, and it's like Marvel 3 vanilla, like when it was very TVC like at E3.
Yes.
Didn't we run into each other there?
I'm glad you brought that up, actually.
Okay. So
because like there are not a lot of people in the fighting game community who are as good at like day one. I'm on the E3 show floor. I have no practice video games,
and I want to win that damn shirt.
Like I'll lose to Justin, but there are really not that many people who can keep up with day one Keats, and Max is one of those people.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate skill that I'm really good at fighting games when they first come out, but damn it, man, after they've been out for a long time, it's hard to keep up, dude. Holy shit.
Yeah, it is, because it requires a lot of work.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Instead of like intuition, right? But yeah, it was really cool to play with you and that TVCized version of MVC, and I know you and I were both going on stage repeatedly, going on huge win streaks and winning t-shirts.
Do you still have that Marvel 3 shirt?
I have it framed and signed.
Are you serious? Oh, I got lucky and I had another friend give me one that was in a better condition because I wore mine out. It was unfortunate. Yeah. So yeah, I
never put it on. I got it signed by the producer and Seth Killian. And
you're the smart one.
I framed it and put it up at my fireplace.
Awesome. You're much smarter than me. So what I'm trying to get at, Chad, is that Killer Instinct as a game, and even when it came to the development at Double Helix, a lot of the guys that were involved in the game, from Iron Galaxy to Double Helix, and most of the people that worked at Microsoft, which included Bucktooth, who was a huge competitive fighting game player for a very long time. I remember watching Buck's videos of like Rock Howard and Ken stuff, and man, CVS2...
like final round 11, Bucktooth
is insane.
He'd be 4th place in Samurai Showdown 6.
Like there's so many people were a part of Killer Instinct's composition. Ed Ma worked on KI before he eventually, like, I think moved to Canada. He was a tester at Iron Galaxy, and Mike Z, who made Skullgirls, also worked on KI back in Double Helix. This is like a fighting game literally made by fighting game fans, and that was the impression that I got when the guys at Double Helix were first showing it. They're like, we want to make this game for like fighting game players. We want to make it crazy. We want to make it fun. And they most specifically said we want to dial everything up to 11. And that was one thing that carried over, especially with season 2 and 3. So,
that was the next place that we spent a lot of time together, actually, was that E3 where they first showed KI.
That's true.
And I got a little privileged time, and we ended up
we definitely did,
for like 6 hours because we couldn't stop. We kept taking away from whatever it is we were supposed to be doing to play more KI. We both got to play against Ken Lobb, which was awesome. And I was side-eyeing your buttons the entire time to combo break you because I had no idea what the animation was.
Yeah, that was kind of some hell to cheese. We're like, man, side-by-side cabinets do not work on this game. So I'm gonna send some invites to the lobby really quick. But yeah, cool. We definitely got some behind the scenes closed door time with the game because of Markman, and Mad Catz actually had a big part of Killer Instinct at the start in terms of like involving it into the fighting game community because they were like headlining it at Evos, and I got to go on stage. Like the only time I got to go on stage at an Evo for playing a game live was for Killer Instinct back in like 2013. So this game made some dreams come true. Not just for myself, but I think for a lot of people. So going back to what I was saying, Keats, enough about me. Yeah. Season 2 started, and one of the big things of KI was the fact that this game dials everything up to 11. Like, this game takes action and player interaction and wants it to be in your face kind of all the time. So when Season 2 sort of happened and you guys took what Double Helix had sort of started with, what was the big thing that you guys wanted to carry over and change going into Season 2?
Sure. A lot of this comes from Microsoft as well and the whole team, so don't think it's just me.
Sure, yeah, you're speaking for the development, yeah.
Now, speaking personally, this is the only part I'll say personally, I really like that Street Fighter Alpha 1, 2, and 3 are really different games, and I really like that Street Fighter 3 and Second Impact and Third Strike are pretty different games.
Sure.
And I was always very disappointed with the way Street Fighter 4 progressed, where each new version, Super and Ultra and all that stuff, weren't really big changes. They just kind of ended up being
very minor stuff.
Really minor.
I felt the same way when Super came out.
Yeah. So for me coming into those discussions, it was always like, let's push a little harder than that. Let's do a refresh. Let's give us a reason to really rebalance this whole thing and shake it up so that it's really fresh. And I loved Season 1 as well. I played the crap out of it. I was online all the time. I was at every event I could make it to play. Some of you guys remember me from back then before I even knew I would be working on it.
Yeah.
When we got in there, I was just like, there are some things in Season 1 that, over the course of the time people playing it had become a little bit degenerate.
Oh yeah, Season 1 was definitely a very open-ended fighting game and what they allowed you to do. And
so the problem was like people were like things like Shadow Enders.
Yes.
Doing full damage on
scale. There was a lot of unbreakable stuff in Season 1.
Right? Yeah. So it was allowing people to play around an aspect of the game that I felt was really brilliant and crucial, which was this whole, you're never locked into a combo, really. You have this way out, as long as you're smart and you're paying attention. You can recognize patterns and stuff like that. So we wanted to kind of push in what we felt the direction probably really was meant to be, which was to have that two-way interaction be valid for as often as possible.
Right.
You don't want safe counter breakers. You don't want unbreakable things like Saberwolf's old medium-heavy unbreakable.
Absolutely, yeah.
You're just trying to dial towards that.
And I do remember when Season 1 was happening, and we did find some like relatively cheap stuff. Their approach, which I actually appreciate, their approach at the start was like, well, that's kind of cool. Let's leave it in the game and see how crazy it gets. Because with fighting game development now, it more seems that a lot of fighting games are designed with the fact that that's going to be too good. That looks like that might be, way too good in this matchup. And I appreciate for the sake of not wanting to have your game be broken, like designing games in a situation where things are just overpowering completely it's just bad design. But having your characters feel powerful, having your characters feel like they're capable of some crazy shit, has always been a really important thing to me, and I think Killer Instinct made me realize that. I want to feel like my character can whoop your ass kind of at any time with a certain type of unique aspect.
Yeah, I think everybody wants that.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the thing that Killer Instinct Season 2, I think, pushed even more, was where you have characters capable of some really cool stuff, and everyone has a unique sort of combo thing, which carried into Season 2. But the instinct, I think, changed a lot in Season 2, where the instinct mode and what characters were sort of like unleashed when they popped instinct was incredibly fun, because like characters like Fulgore got big changes. Characters like Saberwolf got big changes. Was there a specific character that you guys wanted to sort of not really take care of, but adjust going into season 2 that was sort of changing the game?
I think the most contentious one was Fulgore, and I think he's been on a wild ride. And I think Fulgore players will tell you the same thing. But you know, there was a feeling from both the Microsoft and Iron Galaxy sides that Fulgore, Jago's not the poster boy of this game. He's not the dude on the box. Fulgore's the dude on the box, right?
Sure.
And when you have a character that's that iconic and that popular, and people see Fulgore and they're just like, I want to play as that.
Oh yeah, a big robot.
He's extremely popular. You can't have that character be the hardest character to play in the game.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Season 1 Fulgore was the hardest character to play in the game. Arguably,
yeah.
Harder, but Season 1 Fulgore was not easy to play at all.
So
we wanted to kind of change him up to make him stay unique and have his own meter mechanic, but push it in a direction where more people could access the fun.
Yeah, because Fulgore became probably the best he had ever been at the beginning of Season 2, when he had access to, I think it was the up beam, where you actually could have the angled beam, which was the most incredible keep-away tool in the world. But
that thing was super silly.
What I like about KI is that this game absolutely has zoning characters, right? Glacius is a pinnacle zoning character and got a whole bunch of new tools going into Season 2 and beyond. And even at the start, he was like the zoner. However, when you have a zoning character in a fighting game, like, the zoning has to come at a price, in my opinion. It's got to come with, like, oh, I'm going to be doing this and I have to be kind of unsafe. And it seemed that KI sort of held that very traditional, where there's always a risk-reward in everything in Killer Instinct, between choosing to do manuals, choosing to do autos, choosing to zone, choosing to go for heavy doubles, everything like that. How big was the risk-reward design element when you guys were moving forward to Season 2 and 3?
You know, I don't know how much of this I had internalized back when we started doing Season 2. I've grown a lot since then, and my opinions on things have changed. You know, as they would. But, you know, I no longer believe in, like, balancing for equality and trying to make every character even. I don't think that's a smart way to make a good game.
Sure.
So risk-reward, like you were saying, is actually my holy... That is everything I think about now. I'm actually working on an outline for a GDC talk where I can talk about how to balance your game via risk-reward instead of trying to tune dials to make characters equal, whatever that means. Because you'll never reach that goal. You'll just make it worse. Yeah, it's an incredibly important thing to make sure that every action in the game makes sense on some risk-reward level. Let's say you have 4 medium attacks. You got standing medium punch, crouching medium punch, standing medium kick, crouching medium kick. Why would I use any of those over any of the other ones? And if a developer isn't thinking about that kind of thing, you're going to have useless buttons.
Sure.
And you see that in some other games where somebody gets up in your face and it's crouching medium punch, crouching medium punch.
They never do anything else because there's no reason.
Because that's the best one.
Yep.
And they weren't thinking about, oh, okay, this one's got the longest range, so it's got to be 1 frame slower. And this one's the low, so it's got to be 1 frame slower. And it's got to be a little bit more minus. And you have to think about all of the risk-reward propositions on every single tool in the game. And as long as they match up with each other, that doesn't mean everything that's low risk has to be low reward. It just has to mean that if things are low risk, medium reward, then other similar things that are low risk,
they got to scale.
Similar reward, right? And you can make exceptions to that as long as they make sense, but you really just have to think about the whole ecosystem as a thing that should be harmonious. So you balance for harmony. You want a world in which there's a reason to pick a difficult character like Arya, because she's the best. Why would you risk playing Arya if she wasn't the best? If she was equal to everybody else, no one would play that character, because the risk is too high, right?
Yeah.
So the reward has to be higher. And when you view things through that lens and you start to realize that even character balance actually isn't a goal that you want, and that you'll get better variety out of balancing for harmony, then people's playstyles start to shine through. And you get variety because people are attracted to different risk-reward propositions. So
yeah, no, I completely agree.
That's how I view things now.
So, I think that's just the thing that came over time during the development of KI, that it also made me realize when characters were coming in and things were either being changed or new, and I was making something for a trailer, and then all of a sudden that move was just gone and we replaced it with something else, that it was being changed actively all the time. And the reason I appreciate that now especially is that, one, it makes the characters feel powerful, and two, every fighting game or thing that comes out for a fighting game is going to come out broken, right? Something is not going to come out as directly intended from the developers, no matter how much they try. And developers are going to work their butt off. I know you guys, like, when Season 2 was happening and the characters were first launching with TJ and Maya and everything like that, everyone was super confident that things were going to be good because that's how developers have to work. And then, of course, players are going to break things. It's the natural...
There were times, Max, where like we overestimated the players.
Yes.
Because of you, even. Like there was a time early in TJ's development where, you came into the office and then you got hit by armored power line, and then the very next time you had the armor hit stop happen, you just uppercutted right afterwards. And you're like, okay, that's how I deal with that. And I was like, okay, cool, people are gonna figure this out. And 3 years later, I never see that happen.
It just doesn't. Maybe that's because I was able to focus on just that, but.
Yeah, I don't know. But the point is, like, it's never going to come out right.
Exactly.
And you do have to make some sacrifices. So in retrospect, maybe it would have been better if the community banned each character for the first month they were out from tournament play, at least. That might have, eased some of the frustration people had.
Sure.
We did have to rebalance often because when a new character comes out, you have to reconsider the entire equation, right? It's more and more and more complicated.
And that's kind of the natural progression of a roster, right? Because one of the bigger things that came, I think it's the only, like, kind of negative thing about KI, even though it's not a negative, it's actually just a fighting game thing. Because the same thing happened with Street Fighter 4. As the roster got bigger, as characters had more stuff they can do, and everyone was unique, the game essentially, to achieve a higher level, became more and more difficult to understand what to break and what to do. Yeah. And there was some harmony in there.
A game like this that's so animation recognition driven.
Exactly. Like this game requires reactions. Like literally by design document, you should be able to react to things, and there should be a risk and reward for that.
Absolutely.
But the funny thing is, the same thing did happen to another fighting game that grew as a roster over time that, this game sort of used as an example, which is Street Fighter 4. And by the end of Street Fighter 4's life cycle, it had, 40 to 45 characters? Something ridiculous. And by the end of that game, you need to know everyone's crazy vortex. You needed to know, all the frame data in that game. And it was a very hard fighting game to be good at if you wanted to jump into it. Yeah. And the same thing sort of happened with KI. And that's sort of the natural development of fighting games, is that by the end of it, it's going to take you're going to need some knowledge to sort of just jump into it, which is why it can be a little discouraging for some players.
It can be, and it's a concept of skill floor versus skill ceiling, right?
Yeah.
How do you lower the skill floor so that people can get in and enjoy themselves without needing to know a lot, but make sure that the skill ceiling stays really high so that people who put in the time are constantly feeling rewarded? Because if you hit that plateau, you hit the skill ceiling, and you're not rewarded anymore for your additional investment of time.
Yeah.
You get bored and you get frustrated and you leave, right? And that happens naturally in every game. No matter where the skill ceiling is, people are going to hit it, and they're going to get bored, and they're going to go do something else. They're going to pick a new character or pick a new game. It's fine. It's the natural life cycle of things, and it's tough when you want to do a seasonal model like this and you want to release characters per month. You have to release them strong. Nobody wants to buy a new character that sucks, and if the character is not strong, nobody will play it, and you won't get the data you need as a developer to find out exactly where you went too far.
Yeah.
So you know where to pull back, right? But that leads to another frustration cycle of people saying,
oh no, they got nerfed.
I bought this character,
yeah.
I got really good with them, and then you took away the thing I liked the most. And it's like, man,
I was so good at jump forward HP with idle, man. I was just, that character was the best.
I mean, some of it crosses the line in a very obvious way that we should have caught, and it happens. But the bottom line is, the only character we released somewhat weak on purpose was Aganos, because we knew he was so frustrating to fight against. And the other scale you should be tuning the game on, other than risk reward, is fun versus frustration. Because if frustration overtakes fun, people quit. So if the character is too unfun to fight against, then people are going to be getting the heck out of here. So if you have a frustrating character like that, he's got to be weaker and less common.
And that's kind of the natural challenge of KI, where something happened into season, I believe it was season 3, and James Goddard was having me test out a couple of things, which was the auto combo system. But different from auto combos in the game, the actual combo assist, where you could still play the game button-wise completely the same. But for combo assist, it took out the direct motions of moves and allowed you to essentially press just one button to get the special move in the middle of a combo. And it was funny where we were like, does this disrupt the game? Does this actually change the way that people would play the game if a new player is fighting a veteran player. And the answer was not really, because combos in KI aren't really the hard part. Like, some stuff is difficult, and that's the way the game is designed, that there is difficult, hard-to-break combos, but then there's also the basic, sort of easy stuff. But when they eventually did add something to sort of lower, like, the skill gap, which was combo assist, it was integrated in a way that was like, okay, we don't want to screw with the game. We don't want to, like, completely interrupt the way everyone's going to play this thing in order to, like, alienate the players that have already been playing it.
We always knew that. We built that system with that in mind, knowing that we wanted people to... You shouldn't even be able to tell your opponent's using it. Maybe you'll be able to tell from their behavior, but you won't be able to tell from anything else.
Yeah, you'd more see it in their footsies, you know? If somebody's not great at footsies, but they're doing combos, you're like, oh, okay. Well, most of the time, Killer Instinct is won through making very good reads and your footsies. So,
neutral.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. We actually had a huge group of extremely strong top players come to the studio for Season 3. Balance changes or anything were even announced, to have them test our first pass of balance changes.
Yeah.
And that trip included them getting to see combo assist and sanity check it, and make sure that they were like, that doesn't bother them that someone would use that against them.
Sure.
And it was really cool to have all those people there and get all that feedback. We wanted to stay, it's hard when you're the, I'm a big fighting game guy, I've played at EVO and on stage and done the whole thing, right? But when I'm this close to the product and I'm developing it and I'm not competing, I have to make sure I'm sanity checking what I think with the players who are still passionate about the competition half of it.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that about KI. I was always trying to take everyone into consideration, the low-level players and the high-level players. And there's a big discussion nowadays. I'm still watching Riptor do a double ultra. There's a big discussion nowadays of how fighting games are changing accessibility in different ways. And in my opinion, Killer Instinct is one of the few fighting games that absolutely nailed accessibility, and doing it in a way that doesn't alienate the high-level play from the low-level play. And that's always the big worry, is that is the game going to change, to accommodate the players. It's almost just too bad that wasn't
there from launch, because it really does, bridge that first gap really fast.
Yeah, and for a lot of the stuff that was launch KI, like Season 1 KI, you realize, how incredibly quick that the Double Helix guys were able to put together something so polished as what we played at E3. It's ridiculous,
It's unbelievable.
So, the other thing I wanted to talk about, which I know isn't your direct expertise, but is definitely an expertise of the company you've been working at for quite a long time, Iron Galaxy, is online. And I would like to give a couple of people shout-outs, because I was working next to them when we were making trailers and cinematics at IG, that were directly responsible for handling rollbacks and fixing everything that made Killer Instinct's netcode so good. What is it about Iron Galaxy and netcode, Keats, that has carried from Third Strike Online Edition, Darkstalkers Resurrection, Marvel Origins, and now Killer Instinct, that progressively got better all the way to Season 3 and beyond? How and why does Iron Galaxy get the best netcode in fighting games?
First of all, we play our own games and we actually care about this. It's a matter of making it a priority. It's deciding that netcode will be the first priority, not gameplay or graphics, and building the entire game around netplay that works. That we believe in that. I think KI is some of the best netcode out there. I think NetherRealm's done some incredible things with their latest games as well. I think Skullgirls has incredible netcode. My frustration is because this problem has technically been solved for 13 years. And it's really unfortunate every time a new game comes out that doesn't have good rollback netcode. And it is possible to try rollback netcode and botch it. We've seen that a number of times as well. But, we should demand better. And I will say that even though KI's netcode is incredible, it can get even better than that.
Yeah.
And I'll stop
This is technically...
I know for a fact it can be better than that, even.
Killer Instinct netcode is what? Technically based on... its core is based on the technology of back in 2013, right? The original...
it's based on the original GGPO.
Oh, really? So...
Which was 13 years old.
Because I remember back when Season 1 was being developed at Double Helix, there was a day where... Tom and Tony Cannon came down to the office at for literally Double Helix, and they were giving him a bunch of notes.
They didn't use GGPO for Season 1. They wrote their own in-house solution, but they had the Cannons consult, which was fantastic, because they wrote GGPO, and Tony did. And yeah,
So
I mean,
that's
a solved problem for 1v1 peer-to-peer games.
and it's just a crazy thing that even the GGPO that was installed or sort of integrated into this engine back in like 2014 when you guys took it over was just like a development of changing things from season to season, making it better and better, handling rollback to rollback. I can't remember who said it, if it was you or somebody else, that Killer Instinct actually runs, and chat's going to get a little freaked out by this, but I love talking about netcode. It's like one of my favorite things next to frame rate.
Yeah, it's a geeky fun thing to talk about.
That KI technically runs in the background a higher frames per second in order to accommodate a netcode that gets a buffer to sort of work with and emulate an internet delay. Is that actually true? Does KI run like 90 to 120?
No, that's a way to kind of phrase the complicated thing a little easier,
right,
so that you don't have to really get super into it. And I'll probably misspeak here, and Ramon, the Netcode God, will yell at me tomorrow.
Yeah, Ramon is the guy I wanted to give a shout out to, because he was the one I used to geek out. Just tell me about rollback.
So basically, you wanna collect all your inputs and simulate the game state before you do all of your next frame rendering and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to do that stuff so fast that when the game detects a discrepancy and a rollback is necessary because you've predicted your opponent's inputs incorrectly, the game needs to be able to access a previous game state up to X amount of frames backwards. I forget how many frames back KI can go.
And then it makes that compensation.
Like 7 or 9 or something, and then it resimulates all the gameplay logic back up to the current frame. But that's not redoing all the visual stuff. That's just the absolutely bare minimum necessary gameplay logic, so it can go as fast as hell. And it needs to be able to do all of that in one frame, so that it can still have time to do all the other things it needs to do to be a video game.
And some people might be like, oh god, 1 frame, but for the sake of computing, 1 frame is 16.6 milliseconds or something like that.
Yes.
That's technically a long time when it comes to data, data processing. Like, you can handle a lot more actions within a very short period of time if the engine is optimized.
So the concept of rollbacks isn't like ridiculously complicated. It's just, it does take CPU time, and you have to build your game around it, because you can't just take a game like a Mortal Kombat that uses everything that the system has to offer and then just shove rollbacks in. If you watch the GDC talk, NetherRealm did about how they got rollbacks working in their game. They had to completely re-optimize their game. That took them like 8 engineers for 9 months or something like that.
It was expensive too.
Super ridiculous. They had to multi-thread their entire game to find the performance increases they needed to get that whole system to even work. And that's the hard way to do it. The easy way to do it is to make netcode a priority and build that first, and build your engine or build your game around it. That is the right way to do it, in my opinion.
That's the thing I try to remind people every once in a while. Back when Mortal Kombat was announced that it was MKX was getting announced that, hey, we're going to get a netcode patch. We're putting in rollback netcode. I'm like, what? Are you serious? Right? And people don't realize. That's like, I'm like, okay, there's no way this is going to be any good. And then the beta comes out and it's like, oh wow, it's really good.
It was good, yeah.
Somehow this game is handling 333 ms ping, and it feels like there's only a few frames back. Like, that's really good. So
I want to mention that too, because some people don't really see the value difference because of who they play against. But the real value difference of rollback, other than having consistent inputs for yourself, having a 3-frame delay always instead of having the delay change during the match. The real value is in ranked matchmaking.
Yes.
Because we can find you a match that has up to 150 or 200 ping. That's still going to feel great in most cases. Whereas with delay-based netcode, that tops out at like 60, 80 ping. And then all the matches you find beyond that are just really bad.
Yeah.
That increases drastically the number of opponents we can find for you that are of quality, which means your matchmaking queue is faster, and it means you're fighting the same person repeatedly less. It's just like, you gotta have this in your games. Everybody out there, developers, come on.
Yeah, it needs to be.
Buy these damn games. Do it for me. I want to play.
It should be the #1 priority. And the one thing that made, like, we already knew KI had good netcode, but there was a stream back I had in 2016 or so where I played against a community member from our chat room that was in Dubai, and I'm like, oh, should we even try this? Okay, let's give it a shot. And believe it or not, I could still break mediums. I could still, if I was looking for lights, I could break lights. The game technically was allowing me to press buttons that, like, it was still working the 2-frame delay, which is what KI sort of works around.
Yeah,
And
it's 3, I believe.
Is it 3? It was still it was still completely functional with a couple of jitters here and there because the dude is playing from Dubai. Like it is
you're gonna have that.
It is the literal largest distance to California the entire planet Earth has to offer. So it's possible.
I had a Twitter thread on this, but the short version is, the measure of good netcode is that it reduces the effects of a bad connection or a far connection.
Yeah.
It hides that stuff. Whereas, the typical delay-based netcode, it's going to seem fine if you play your buddy who lives 30 miles away.
Yeah.
But that's not the measure of good netcode. Good netcode should let me reach as far as I can possibly reach. So I can play my friends who live in Chicago and LA and sometimes maybe in Europe too. That's cool.
And it actually works. Tell me, Keats. I'm just gonna. This is the last question about netcode because I can literally talk about. We can do an entire Wake Up SRK podcast about this.
I love geeking out about this stuff.
What was the first fighting game netcode that you played that blew your mind and you're like, oh my god, maybe we can play fighting games online in the future and they won't suck?
It was the first version of GGPO beta with Street Fighter Alpha 2 on it. I was in that MIRC, the Capcom MIRC. With the Cannons and Wizard and all them, I got into the beta. I had never really played Street Fighter Alpha 2 because that was not in a lot of arcades around where I was. We had Alpha 1 and Alpha 3, but not Alpha 2, and that was like a revelation to me. I think Dandy J had a thread about this on Twitter last week or the week before. It was a revelation to play that. I was like, oh my god, we can play fighting games online now. Yeah, and I had spent a ton of time playing like World Heroes Perfect on Kyera against Josh the Funk Tuck and
Kyera,
all kinds of stuff with horrible delay, and it was just a revelation, and I was so excited, and I was like, okay, Capcom's gonna license this, and all my favorite games are gonna be incredible from here on out. And you know what future we ended up getting.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny...
I remain disappointed almost every other month.
I think for myself and a lot of other people, like their first experience with like online fighting games in terms of a general public and not like, working with the cannons and stuff like that is probably the original Xbox. Capcom released CVS2 Online, and then after that came Third Strike Online, and I remember specifically thinking, dude, this game's online. This is going to kill arcades. And I remember being happy about that because I was going to save money. I'm not going to have to spend all my money in arcades anymore. I'm just going to be able to...
Then you spend it on tournament travel.
Yeah, right. Oh, God. So, and then it came out, and then obviously you realize, like, there are many issues ahead of us when it comes to the online in these games.
And the custom colors, you're playing against the green Zangief.
That was amazing.
And your headset to a friend and he's talking trash.
That was my first experience, but I'd say the first time because beyond that, it was like, Third Strike Online, when you played it on Anniversary Collection, also wasn't good. It was essentially the same thing as CVS2. Was back in, I think, 2007 or 2008. Someone's gonna have to remind me. Did anyone play Virtua Fighter 5 when it came out on Xbox 360? That game's net play was ridiculously good, and I remember playing dudes in, I think, the UK, and it actually ran really good. That was when I realized that maybe netcode could actually work in these games.
Wonder what they used.
I don't know. I think it was a delay base, but I think they were hiding it. Like, Sega was doing some weird stuff, and that was like the old AM2 team. I don't know, but
part of it is probably that actions are quite a bit slower in Virtua Fighter.
Yeah, that's true.
In, like Capcom games. I don't know what a fast jab is in Virtua Fighter, but like in Tekken, for instance, you have 8 or 10 frame moves.
Correct.
Street Fighter having 2 or 3 frame moves typically. So yeah, that would hide delay based quite a bit better, especially if you write it really well.
Yeah. So one other thing I wanted to talk to you about before I let you go, I know it's getting later for you on the East Coast, is some of the stuff you guys had going on in Season 2 and 3, and I don't know if you can talk about this, but if you can, I do have another topic.
I can.
What was some of the stuff that you guys really wanted to add to Killer Instinct that you might not have had the resources or the time to do so?
I think the biggest thing for all of us was just a revamp of the way the accessory system works so that we could add more to the game. There were some technical limitations that prevented us from adding the amount of accessories. I think people on both teams.
Oh, you mean
Microsoft
like costume items, right?
Yeah, costume items.
Okay.
More hats,
Yeah.
We really wanted to get more of that stuff in the game. We know people wanted it, but the technical limitations we had with that system, the way it was, were going to be, I guess, too much time to be able to fix or adjust to get to where we needed to get on that. And it never really ended up happening, which is unfortunate.
And that mostly boils down to because you guys have like the Helix engine. You have this engine that came from another developer, and this the engine was not designed for Xbox One slash.
I mean, it's not
next
because
gen.
of that necessarily. It's a good engine. The real problem was the timetable that we were making this game on, right?
Gotcha.
We were handed what Double Helix made, and they had to make it, as you said yourself, they had to make it insanely fast. And it's probably a miracle it worked as well as it did.
Yeah.
For the speed that they made it, and we had to pick up that pace too. We went over to Double Helix and we hung out for a week, and we got up to speed on their tools and their processes. And we came back home, and we had a version of TJ Combo due for an E3 show in like 4 weeks.
Well, I remember that.
So we had to make some version of TJ Combo that wasn't going to embarrass us as a studio in 4 weeks, and that was incredibly hard because we were not, we were not up to speed the way that they were. They were on their 8th character. We were on our first one.
Yeah.
Their tools, and we're getting used to their tools and stuff like that. So,
and that was a big
really,
thing.
Really
and
incredibly challenging. So, and the real problem, like I said, with this costume thing was just that they built the system the way they built it, probably for time reasons, figuring that it could be fixed later, and it definitely could have been fixed. It just we never had the time to do it.
It's a miracle it ended up getting developed as much as possible as it did, because I remember there was a time frame in Season 2 where you guys couldn't actually cut the camera, where if you wanted to have like a cinematic thing happen, like how when you do a level 4 ender in the game now, actually doing that was difficult, and no one had figured it out yet. And then eventually they had to figure that out. So I think Arya was one of the first characters that had it.
I mean, the biggest thing we pushed, I think, this is just a weird geeky game dev story, but there were not many projectiles in Season 1 that did anything other than like go in a line.
Yeah.
And we had some really wacky ideas, so we got into the projectile system.
Tell me that Omen was one of the first.
Well, we started, Maya was incredibly complicated and had to bounce daggers off walls that were homing and going in curves and creating other projectiles.
And locking on.
And then Conra was next, and he had to create a puddle that could create other things coming out of it. We pushed that system super far, and believe it or not, Arya's drones and Gargos' minions are technically the same thing as a Jago Fireball. That is all coming from the projectile system.
Wow, so from a development standpoint, that's weird.
We pushed it, yeah, it's super weird. We pushed it really far. Shout out to Noah Sasso, Get Dizzy, and Zenak, Chase Lacoste, who really had a huge hand in pushing that system so far.
That's cool. I remember one of the conversations we had back in like Season 3 when you guys were working on stuff. One thing I really would have loved to have seen added, but once again, time and constraints and development is a big problem when it comes to making games and solving issues, was doing more stuff with your meter. Like Shadow Meter was kind of limited to like counters and doing shadow moves, of course, but giving characters like actual supers and things like that. But then we started talking about how crazy it could get. Like you have to do all these new cinematic things. You got to get the camera to do all this stuff. There's so many things involved that would be cool, but at the time, they were working on Ultimates.
Yep.
And Ultimates were kind of taking up that development, those resources.
Yeah,
and
I was really interested in 2-meter supers, for sure.
I think it was worth it because Ultimates was a thing that people were literally asking about since like Season 1.
Yeah, and it's too bad we didn't get to finish those. I think those were being created with intention to be sold in packs or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, those sales would fund the rest of them, and then I guess they decided, hey, just give these to people because people are awesome and they love KI. So.
And this game brought back a crazy memory. Do you remember when Shadow Jago came out as like a limited purchase character, and then it was like, if we hit this number, we're gonna do all this like tournament stuff and all these things, and the number was hit within less than 24 hours.
Yeah, super awesome. I think more games should do stuff like that.
It was insane. I think Mortal Kombat learned from it because they released an Ermac skin or a Sub-Zero skin, and they used that to fund a lot of their tournament stuff. And then Street Fighter did the same thing with Street Fighter V. You buy the stage, it funds the tournament. That model that kind of began with, I think it began with KI, is one of the best ways to support your community. And it shows really cool because it happens fast.
Yeah, it's tough to, try and get the marketing department to sponsor tournaments because you have to show them a return on investment on that stuff, right?
Sure.
Well, where's the ROI? Put together a deck. But when you can try and kind of combine the idea of promoting a new piece of content, a character or a skin or whatever, with chipping some portion of that into tournaments, it kind of fuels itself in a really nice way that, gets the community involved in a way that I think can can turn out to be really, really special and really cool.
That's awesome. Well, Keats, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I got to say thank you guys for all the hard work you put in on this game over the few years.
I mean, you were there for a bit, doing some cool stuff.
Thank you.
Some trailers and
I appreciate it. But I would not have gotten done what I was able to do with trailers or cinematics without all the badass stuff you guys put on your characters. I just loved the fact that I got to show people and show off the stuff that you guys were doing. So
yeah, we love doing our streams too. I was rewatching one of them today, feeling all nostalgic. Like, man, these are good. But yeah, I just, I want to thank everybody for their support on KI and being a fan and playing the game, even the people who are not so nice to me. I still love you too.
I got to admit, when it was Iron Galaxies taking it over, I don't know about that, and then it just took a little bit of time. It just give us the chance to prove ourselves, and we can do
There's
it.
There's always
and
going to be some trepidation there when that's such a weird situation.
It was
that kind of thing doesn't happen.
Yeah, and it was like Killer Instinct. For all things considered, once Double Helix was kind of taken out of the equation, who were the creators of like this engine in this game. Yeah. It's like, well, that's it. Like, they got bought out. Sorry, guys. And the fact that they were able to go to you guys, which are pretty much the next...
it could have ended right there.
It could have ended right there. And
it absolutely could have.
Somehow, there was a studio out there that had a whole bunch of expertise with fighting games, that had a whole bunch of expertise with online and net play, and wasn't NetherRealm, because they're the only other one in the US that kind of is a bigger studio that has that expertise. So
yeah, and I'll remind people too, like, you should never judge a studio based on its like name. You can't say like, oh, Iron Galaxy can't do that. Like,
dude,
if we can't do something, we'll just staff up. The company's not a person.
Guess who? Guess who?
If we don't have enough artists to do a thing, we just hire the artists. So, it's not that complicated. So
by that
think
same
about things more in terms of people, not in terms of what a company did, but what team was on that thing and what people were doing that thing.
Exactly. By that same degree, guess what other studio should not have had any right doing what they were doing? Double Helix with Killer Instinct.
Yeah, and they knocked it out of the park.
Yep. So that is the way it is. Keats, thank you a ton, man. I'm gonna go commentate some matches, and
cool. Everybody get out there and play this version of KI.
Yeah, everyone jump in and play some KI tonight. And I hope the best for you guys on Iron Galaxy, and hopefully sometime in the future, if we can get the attention of the dudes at Microsoft, I would love for you guys to make more of this game going down the line.
Something like that, or I'd love to make a Marvel or a One Piece fight.
Yeah, let's just get you guys on. Let's just make Marvel 4 happen right now.
Yeah.
Let's just go do that.
Hook me up with the license, and I'll make some magic for you.
All right, Keats, I'll see you later, man.
Take it easy.
Take care.